crafty people. Thanks for visiting my YouTube channel. I'm Shellie Geigle with JS Hobbies and Crafts. Got a new mini album tutorial for you, and I want to thank Mel B's Paper Creations for giving me this project on how to make this. It's a different style mini album. It's a mini album pouch, and inside this it has like 4 inserts. This holds a lot of photos. And if you're somebody who just likes albums to just plant your photos in them, this is a great one for you, and it's so simple. So again, thank you, Mel, for sharing the project with me, showing me how to make it, and giving me the go to use that in this tutorial. So let's take a look at what we're going to be making today, guys. So here we are. Again, it's a pouch style mini album. It's got 4 inserts in here. We sewed them in. It is completely different, unique, and again, thank you, Mel B's Paper Creations. You're the best. So this was made with the Bob and Betty Cottage Blush paper collection, and they're from India, and I had so much fun with these. Colors are amazing. Okay, so what this does is just flips open. And what this mini album style is for is just placing photos. But I did add some pockets, I did add some flips, and to give a little more stuff. But you have this whole space right here to place a photo. This comes down, and you've got a place down here, and I did add this down here, and you can slide something back behind. First insert. So what this does is it's magnetic, and it opens up. Here is a wonderful place to stick a photograph. This comes down, and we've got a flip here, and we got space down here. Just plant your photos. This, another place, plant your photos. This is a large fold out, and this was included in the design that Mel gave me. The flip that I installed extra would be this. So you can do it or not do it. I do teach to add it. So this comes out, and just look at all the spots that you can just be planting photos without having to mat them down on individual photo mats. This folds out. Again, more space. So I did add the pocket for storage for those people that would like to do the photo mats and add. And I've got some picture mats here, a beautiful trim, and I do teach for those that are not die cutting that want to use their paper punches, or they have the option of not using paper punches. Okay, folding this all back up, this was the first insert. This just folds down. Here's our next one. And notice on the back of the first insert, you still have more room to place photos. And this is the same design throughout. So this is magnetic. It comes up. This comes down. You have the flip, and you have space down here. This comes down. We have the right side and the left. Look at all that space. And of course, our pocket in the back and picture mats. And we go to the third insert, same thing. And we have our flip, our fold out pages, and our pocket. If I can get my fingers in there. And we added a few things during the tutorial like this, and we just slide little tags in there. And this folds up, and we go to the last insert, and we just fold that up. This comes down. Here is a fold up. We have a little thing here, and we can slide our tag back behind. Isn't that gorgeous? That just came out perfect. It was like perfect for this paper. This folds out. And again, we have our pocket with our couple picture mats in there. Alright, so then when the fourth insert is done, you can fold back, and again on the back you have places, and in the back of the album itself you have places. So that is what we are going to be making today. So let's move into the materials list. Materials list. So we're going to need 2 of the Bob and Betty Cottage Blush paper collections, and there are 12 sheets and they're double-sided, plus we get a bonus sheet on the back of this, and we've got our sentiments, some tags. And Bob and Betty, they are actually out of India, and I imported this paper from there just for this tutorial and for some of my other crafting projects. It is just absolutely gorgeous. For the base, we are not using chipboard. In fact, we're going to be using 12 by 12 cardstock, and I chose white. And this is, I'm using 2 of these. There are 10 sheets in each pack, and it's about an 85 pound, so it's a heavier weight. And that is what I will be using. Alright, so I want to go over really quick inks that I am using for my different flowers and my leaves. If you're not a die cutter, that's okay. I'm going to show you what I'll be suggesting to use. So I'm going to use the Tim Holtz Distress inks for this, and I have picked raspberry, squeezed lemon, we got Victorian Velvet, spun sugar, and 2 different greens for our leaves, and that's peeled paint and crushed olive. Now, people who are not die cutting their flowers, let's get to you first. What you can do is, if you have a punch that is like a leafy branch type style, what you can do is the same thing that us die cutters are doing with our leaf dies, and that's inking it with the darker and then blotting on here and there with the crushed olive. I did finish this off with Wink Stella, which gave it that shimmery look. I don't know if you can see that or not. And then once that dried, I applied glossy accents, and that's where you see the gloss on it. And here is one of these, you can probably see. Anyway, this will work great. Not only will you be using this for your leaves, but you can use this for your trim. Now, if it is not in stock, there are other options you can do. You can use a large edge punch instead of using this as your border. If you have no leaves at all, you can always cut out leaves. Very simple. You just kind of cut out almost like a teardrop if you're doing it by hand. And then you can ink it just the same. And that is a very easy process. And I'm using the peeled paint. And first thing I'm going to do is just fold this right in half to get a crease in the middle there for the leaf. And then you can ink around the edges with your dark, and then you can also blot on some of this ink here, and you can go darker if you wish. It's completely up to you. So this is another way that you can do this. The crushed olive comes into play here, and all I'm going to do with that is just kind of blot here and there. And then you would apply your Wink Stella, which gives it that shimmery look. And I'll bring that up. I think you can see it. Shimmery. And then you top it off with your glossy accents. So that is another way that you can do some leaves. And you do several of these, of course. Okay. Flowers for the people who will not be die cutting. I can give you some recommendations here and show you what you can do. These are the Shabby Rose Pink flowers, and I've taken one off. and you can leave the color as is. But if you were to take the pink raspberry, you can actually just kind of brush some along the edges to get a darker, almost a raspberry effect to it. You can also apply the Wink of Stella to this and also apply glossy accents. Another one is this, and this is just called Pale Yellow Roses. And this is what it looks like. Now this is the same thing. Look at how gorgeous that is. And again, this is just with picked raspberry. I opened up the flower. I'll show you. I'll pull one off here if I can. I opened it up a little, like so, and just started daubing around some of this color. And it just creates an amazing, gorgeous, look how easy that is, flower. And you can also add your glossy accents to this too. So and that's what you can get. And you can go a little heavier on the leaves like I did here, but that is one option for you so that you're just using two different flowers. Or we have a wide variety at my store if you would prefer to use your own choice. Those of us that are die cutting, I use the Oakberry Lane Blossom stamp and the Oakberry Lane Blossoms die. And I've got a few examples here for you, and I'll help you along with how I did that. In the center, I am using Prills, and that's the Lemon Chiffon. And of course, I got my Wink of Stella and my glossy accents to go over it. Okay, the leaves that you saw here, and I have a variety that come with one stamp and one die, and very easy. And that's using the Heartfelt Creations Leafy Accents stamp and die. If you have a different Heartfelt leaves, a classic leaf die, you can use those too because they're all kind of similar. But what you get is a variety of different ones, as you can see. If you want to learn how to make some flower shaping, learn how to do some of this, I recommend getting one of the Heartfelt Creations flower shaping kits. Several years ago, I did use the McGill, and I wore the heck out of them. And then when they came out with this was wonderful. There are two different ones. You can get the Essentials, which will give you your stylus and a couple tips and a little molding mat, or the Deluxe Flower Shaping Kit, and you get a ton of different styluses, and you get all of this, your piercing mat, and of course mine is a mess, but you get the large mat. So that is what I used when shaping my flowers, and I'll show you after we get started really quick how I achieved some of these flowers that you see here. I just did some real basic, easy shaping. Now really quick on the Oakberry Lane Blossom stamp, if you don't have a die cutting machine, that doesn't mean that you can't make handmade flowers. So really quick, I am going to show you, and I'll just put some ink on there. We'll stamp it. And you can see these aren't that hard to cut out by hand. It is a little more work, but honestly, you don't have to be perfect. As you can see, I'm not going to be perfect because guess what? We're going to be inking around the edges anyway to hide any of those imperfections. So not exactly as accurate as a die cutting machine, but watch this. We're going to be going around the edges anyway. And I'm just doing this as an example. I'm going to grab some yellow here. Let's just add a little color. So you can see, and once you get a few of these cut out, then you can actually make your own flowers. Wink of Stella. This is what I was talking about that will give us a shimmer on our flowers and leaves. Glossy accents. I love this because it not only strengthens my flower, my die cuts up, but it glosses them. I'm going to be die cutting some of the pockets and trims in this, so I decided to go with the Heartfelt Creations Petite Pocket Accents, and this is what it looks like. One of these in here produces this. It's gorgeous. It's absolutely lovely, and that is what I'll be using. Another one that they came out with, and it's called Album Tags and Accents. And you get all of this in here, and I'm going to show you an example. This is not from the paper collection. I grabbed from my scratch pieces of paper, though I can show you an example. But for this, you're going to get 2 different sizes. And one is the outside frame, which when you die cut it, it's this. They give you the inside frame because it's a layering, and you can die cut onto our decorative paper, and then it comes down like this, and that's gorgeous. And I'm going to be using some of this for my picture mats and accenting. Also in this, and I'm going to show you, once again I used paper from my paper stash, but they have this, and this is what it produced. Now you can look at it this way or this way, whatever way. And they have the inside layering, which is this, and I was able to die cut this out. Magnets. Now you're going to need 20 total. That's going to give us 10, let's see, yeah, 10 pairs. And we'll be using those, and I sell them in the 10-pack. They're very heavy duty. They work really good, especially with thicker cardstock. Now, because we're going to be binding this into our album at the bottom, we're going to bind it in, and I'm going to show you how to do this. It's with some string. Now, this is a waxed string. Any string will do. I prefer the waxed. It's easier, especially if you're a bookbinder or if you're, stuff like that. It works really well. So some string. Adhesives. We're going to want a roll of our 1/4-inch score tape, and we're going to want some really good glue. I use the Art Glitter Dries Clear adhesive glue. There's no glitter in it. If you do want to give this a try, I recommend it. It's good also for metal and resins and so forth. But you'll definitely want to purchase that metal tip. Without the metal tip, you're going to waste your glue. You only need a little bit of this glue, and it goes a long way, and it's a precision tip too, so it helps control and helps get the glue on where you need it. As far as tools, what you're going to need, you are going to need a pair of scissors. A craft knife will make your life much easier in this. Pencil with eraser, a ruler, scoring board with a scoring tool, and of course your paper cutter. Let's get started, guys. So I designed this tutorial just in case you don't want to download this, that we're going to go over all of our pieces so everyone has an opportunity to make this. So what we had were 2 pieces of cardstock cut at 7 inches by 12 inches. We labeled it Base Album. Now we laid both of these on our scoring board, and we scored at 7 inches and 8.5 inches. So that was our first set. The next thing we did was we cut 4 pieces of cardstock that were 7 inch by 12 inch. We laid it on our scoring board. We were 12 inches across the board. We scored at 7 inches and 7.25 inches. And we labeled that Insert Base. Next, what we did was we cut 4 pieces of cardstock that were 5.5 inches by 7 inches, and we labeled that Insert Top Flap. We laid these on our scoring board, so we were 5.5 inches across our board. We scored at 2.5 inches and 2.75 inches, and we labeled that Insert Top Flap. I think I just said that, but just in case. Alright, so we had to cut 8 pieces of cardstock that were 6 7/8 by 7.5 inches. We laid this on, and there's 8 pieces here that were cut like that. We laid it on our scoring board, so we were 7.5 inches across the board. We scored at 6 7/8 inch and 7 1/8 inch. And we labeled that insert sides. We cut 4 pieces of cardstock that were 4.5 inches by 8 inches. We labeled that insert back pocket, and there were 4 of these. We laid these on our scoring board, so we were 8 inches across the board. We scored at 1/2 inch and 7.5 inch. The last that we did was we cut, and that was a total of 4 pieces that were 4.5 inch by 7.25 inches. We laid these on our scoring board. We were 7.25 inches across, and we scored these each at 1/2 inch. Alright, anything else that we need to cut will be done during the tutorial, especially all of our decorative paper. That's done together. So we are ready to go, and the first thing that we want to grab is the 2 base album pieces. Let's go ahead and fold on our score lines, and we will use our bone folder, which I'm not sure if I mentioned, but you'll want a bone folder. If you don't, you can use your fingers. Just make sure you're lining up on the sides and you're creasing that really good. So what we're looking at here is you're going to have the longer piece off to the right. So we have the short part of the paper where it's been scored here, and the short part here. We're going to grab our 1/4 inch score tape, and we're going to line right to the edge right here. And we'll cut off any hangover. We're going to use our bone folder to make sure that we burnish that down really good. Now, one thing about this I want to say is you're going to want to have a flat edge. It's easier that way. It's not totally necessary, but flat edge, like on my paper cutter, has a flat edge, because I'm going to show you why. We're going to remove this, the backing, okay, and I'm just going to slide that over there. We're not going to cut, I'm just using this. So I'm going to push this up against that bar there so it keeps me straight, and I'm going to come over and push this one against the bar over here, and I'm going to bring it up just so that it overlaps right on top of that score tape. That way I get it on as straight as I can. You don't have to be perfect. So this is what you should have so far. This comes up, this comes over, just like this. Alright, to keep us organized now, what I want you to do is write on this one here, front, and actually I want you to write it up here. Front flap. Now on this one, if you were to pull it up, this is right down in here. I want you to put bottom. This will help us whenever we look at this. Now fold this over. Here's your scoring here and here. We're going to just write top. So that will tell us that's the top. This is the bottom, and that's our flip for the front. Okay? All of this will get covered. this is what we're going to have to do. We will be making some holes down here, but first we need to make sure that we have our inserts, and once we're able to create our inserts, when we lay them down, we'll have a better idea of where we need to line up and start doing our holes for stringing in our thing. So we can set this off to the side for now, and we are going to grab at one of our insert base, which is 7 inches by 12 inches, and we have 4 of those. Okay, so I'll take one of those for now, and we are going to fold on those score lines and burnish on those lines, and then we can push it back up to where it's flat. We're next going to be grabbing our insert sides. We're going to grab 2 of them at this point, okay, because we will need 2, and we can just fold on those score lines on each one, and we're going to set these off to the side. We're going to grab one of our insert top flap, and we'll fold on the score lines. So all we're going to create is one insert right now, and that will, once you see how it's done, it'll be easier when we make the other 3, because there's a total of 4 inserts inside this album. So here is our insert base, and the way we want to look at it is so the short side is in the back. Make sure that you are folded like this on the bottom and it's straight. Now, insert top flap. The side that we want is from the edge to that first score line, 2.5 inches. So if you were to do this, it's the shorter side. Want you to just take this and bring that right on over the top. If you were to do that and pinch, you'll see where that overlaps over the back one. So once you do that and you have that on like that and you pinch it, I want you to turn it over. Take your pencil and lightly draw a line. Okay? Now you will see where the bigger part down here is going to overlap onto this. Let's grab our score tape. So I am going to lay my 1/4 inch score tape right at the edge. And I'm going to bring another row, and I'm not going to go past that line at all, so I can still kind of see it. Let's burnish that down. Now again, we want to stay straight, so this is where I'm going to use the flat edge of my paper cutter to help me out. I'm going to remove that score tape backing. If you have any score tape that peeks over the edge, you definitely want to get that off. So I'm going to press that down, and it's actually easier for me to, I'm right-handed, so I'm going to put this down. Here's my score tape. Here is the bigger part. Here's the 2.5 inch. It goes on this side. So I'm going to press that up and just line that right up with my score tape and the sides and press it down. So let me show you what we have now. Once that's on, this comes up and this comes over, and it'll be a nice fit. All right. This is so simple, and we are going to take this slow for the first 2, and then I think you'll understand. Now remember, on this, what we're going to do is this is now going to be the top, okay? So let's just put top. We'll cover that with paper, okay? So you have 2 score lines here, and I'm going to tell you exactly what we're going to do. We folded on this, right? You have, looking at your paper like this, my score lines are right here. you have a bottom and a top. On that top one, what we're going to do is fold this over, and we're going to put a line of score tape right here on that little flap. And if you have any score tape peeking over, definitely clip it off. And I'm going to show you this first. And again, bottom score line, top one I'm pinched on. Here's my sticky. Okay, this is my top, but I am going to turn it so it's easier for me. So my top flap right there. So this is going to be the bottom. I'm going to take this. You have this score line to the left and a score line to the right. The one to the right is where we're going to line this up just above to the edge of that score line. Now all I have to do is bring this up along that edge. And I can open it up now and burnish it down. And then I can push it back so it's flat on the sides. So now, here's our top, here's our side. And it's going to fit in there perfectly. And this should still be able to come up and that over. Okay, so I have the right side on. I am going to turn this. Actually, I shouldn't. I'm going to just do this without, because I don't want to mess you guys up by turning this around so many ways. Here's my top. Here's my right flap I just put on. Okay, this is our other inside insert, my insert side, because we needed two. I have my little flap at the edge, and I'll just line my score tape on that. And I'll burnish that down. Again, this is my bottom. And I hope my head does not get in the video. So now I'm going to pinch back on that outer score line there. I'm going to bring it to just above that top score line right here, so that I can just press right on the edge to get me lined up, and then I'll bring it up along the edge up there to keep me straight. And I'll open that up, burnish it down. So this is what we have now. Push that back so you are flat, this, and that. And you should have a nice folder there. Okay? We will be down here at the bottom. We're going to be needing our ruler. And we're going to be making marks. So grab your ruler. Right here, there is a score line, top and bottom. In between, in the middle, is where we want to put our marks. So grab your pencil. Your first little dot will be at a 1/2 inch. Your next one is going to be at 2 inches. We have 3.5 inches. We have 5 inches and 6.5 inches. That is what yours should look like. Okay, we are just going to fold these up, and we're going to set this to the side, and we are now going to make our second insert. So let's do this again together. Let's grab one of our insert bases and fold on those score lines. Okay, we'll move back so we are flat. And the short side is to the back, and the bigger side is to the front. We're going to need 2 insert sides, and we are going to fold on those score lines. And we need our one insert top flap. And what you might want to do is go through and do as I did. We can erase our pencil mark, but it's the side that has the 2.5 inches, just kind of mark it. You don't have to put the arrows. That's just for visual for you all. And we'll fold on those score lines. The 2.5 is the side that goes to the front. And I have 2 insert top flaps now. That's okay. I'll just put this one out to the side. All right. So the 2.5, which is the shorter side, goes towards the front, and we are going to just wrap that right around. We will pinch it, and we'll tuck that back piece there over. Make sure we're straight and we're not pushing it, that we're flat. And we'll just do a light pencil line to help us. So now we're going to lay 2 rows of our 1/4" score tape on that piece. Okay, I've got this for my straight edge here. Now remember, the 2.5 is the short side now. It's going to be over here. It's the larger width that needs to connect. So I'm just going to open this up, use the flat edge, and do that. This goes over the top, and you should look like this. So right now we're going to write top. I need to keep this handy, I think, to keep me straight for the next one. Okay, we have 2 insert sides. So we have our score lines there, and we have that little lip over there. Let's line both of our pieces on that lip. Okay, so I'm going to have to turn this one this way because it's going to attach there. And if it's easier for you, remember the short is the top. I wrote it on the outside, but I'm going to write it on the inside for visual purposes. Okay, got the score tape backing off. And you have an inside and an outside score line. Pinch on that outside. Bring it all the way to where this top score line is. And we'll go just a hair above it, right at the edge. I'm going to press, and then I'm going to line this up, going all the way up the side. Open it up and burnish it down. Same thing for this one. Okay, before we can finish this off, we need to get our ruler. And right in the middle there, we have a 1/2 inch. A 2 inch, a 3.5, a 5 inch, and a 6.5 inch. Our second insert is done. Let's set this off to the side. We're going to do our next one. We need our insert base, and this will go quicker once you do this. And the big side up front. I need my insert top flap, and the 2.5 inch side is the one that I marked, and that is the one that shows, the 2.5 inch side shows over the top of this. Make sure that's all done. Okay, there's the short side in the back and the 2.5 inch side on the front. Open this up. Use this as a guide to keep me straight. As straight as I can anyway. And on the small little lip there, we'll lay our score tape, pinch, and attach. And over here, the other side, and burnish it down. Grab your ruler, your pencil. We have a 1/2 inch, 2 inch, 3.5, 5, and 6.5. Check to make sure everything is working and you're flat. All right, We have, how many more do we have here? We have one more left. Perfect. Get these in. We have now all 4 of our inserts that will fit. This is the front flap. That is the top part of our spacing. This is where we are going to be hooking these on. And you can kind of see how this is going to work. And this comes up, and this is going to roll over the top. We do have a score line here, and I'm not sure how I got that a little off, but that's okay. It's going to just roll this on over. I'm not sure about that one. That was weird. So this is what yours should look like. And let's make some marks now. So placing your first one here, and you have this score line, place this so you are just a hair back from it, okay? I want you to draw a line. Place another one so that the front is even, and you can see that little line still. You should be able to anyway. And draw a line. If you're a little crooked, that's okay. We're going to place the next one. Make sure you can still see that line. And we will draw a line. And then the last one. Make sure you can see that line. And we will draw a line as best we can anyway. Alright, that's all we need as far as that. Just make sure you're not on that score line. But we have our lines in place, so in between the score line and this, we're going to take our ruler and we're going to be centered in between like we were before. 1/2 inch, 2 inch, 3.5, 5, and 6.5. We're going to go in between the next 2 lines. Just move your ruler up. 1/2 inch, 2 inch, 3.5 inch, 5 inch, 6.5. See how they line up? We'll move over to the next one. 1/2 inch, 2 inch, 3.5, 5, and 6.5. One more to go. 1/2 inch, 2 inch, 3.5, 5, and 6.5. So there are our lines there. And once we get this all situated, all of our inserts in there, it'll be just fine. Okay. So we are going to leave this without any paper. So if you have a little puncher that can do that, you'll want little holes. So I'm just going to use my craft knife and make sure that it is centered. Be careful not to tear into your paper too much. Just enough to make little holes. So I'm just going to press down. And I'm going to do this with each one of these holes. Okay, so this is what the bottom of yours should look like now. Alright, on each one of these, we can now go in and make sure you're centered and make holes where we put our little dots, little holes. So we're going to do this with each one of our inserts. We'll be placing some decorative paper before we put our inserts in here, but I do want to prep to get us all ready to go. All your inserts at the bottom should look like this now. Let's fix our top where we scored. I'm not sure where I went wrong there, but you have a score line back here and it may or may not work for you. But what I want you to do is place your inserts inside. Okay, put this over the top so it's flush. Push on the back and pinch. See that line? That is where we are going to score. Oh my, I've got Roomba coming in here. After you do that, you should have a nice fit. We will have a little bit more down here, and that will help for when we are placing magnets or any other bulk. Let's take our inserts, our 4 inserts, and set them off to the side. Alright, so whether you're die cutting or you're using a 1/2-inch punch or you're using this punch or even a wider edge punch such as the large punch, everyone will be cutting, and this is not in the pre-cutting measurement guide. Look in your reserves for leftover cardstock before cutting into new. But you're going to need 9 pieces. You're going to need 9 that are 2.5 inches by 7 inches. And you do not need to write on yours. I'll be erasing mine. But let's go ahead and cut that. Alright, let's start with the die cutters that are using the petite pocket accents. Inside you will find this piece. You are going to die cut 9 times. What you're going to want to do is place this down, bring it to the top, and you are going to center this in the middle. So you will have some white over here and here. So, and you want to make sure that you're even here and here as well. Let's run that really quick through our die cutters. Once you run it through the die cutters, this is what you're going to have. What you're going to want to do is where it splits up here, you're going to cut straight to match up to release that top portion. Next, you will see where it ends here. We're going to use our scissors and we're going to cut in from the sides. So that is what we're going to do on each one of ours. Let's talk about the ones that are using a large EK Tools punch, and that will give you about 1 inch or so trim. On each one of these, you will cut along one side. If you are using a small 1/2 inch punch, you will die cut along one side. So let's everybody get ready and get our die cutting done, or our punching. So I have all mine die cut and ready to go. The only one I'm going to worry about right now is one of these. So that's all we need right now. I'll set it off. Let's find some paper for the front flap of our little album. So the first thing we want to do is prepare and get ready for paper on the front and different things we're going to do. So let's start here. Here's the cover of Cottage Blush. On the back side, you're going to see all this neat stuff. So what we're first going to do is trim off this trim piece up here. We don't need it. Then what we're going to do is put this on our paper cutter, and we are going to cut each one of these panels out. Next, we can cut out and around, fussy cut around the roses. We can cut out each of the tags. We can cut out this beautiful trim. And we can cut out and around the sentiments. So let's take a moment and get those ready to go. One thing I want to point out is that side little trim piece. If you do not want to fussy cut around it, you do not have to. You can just cut a straight line. I am going to cut out and around mine. Now notice when cutting, I am not being perfect. I am not great at fussy cutting, so I am just kind of weaving out and around this. So I want to show you some of my fussy cutting before, so you're not sitting there going, wow, that's a lot. So I did cut out and around these, and when I went out and around the ones, there were 2 that had flower, little roses. You know, I just went out and around that. Now for these, I just cut them into even little pieces. If I want to fussy cut around that at the time when I'm using it, I will do so. And the same thing is we'll just kind of go out and around this for these. and cut these out too. Once you have all your pieces that you cut out, we'll set these off to the side so we can just grab at them when needed. Even our panels. In your paper pack, you will find this gorgeous print, and on the back it looks like this. The first thing that we're going to want to do is trim off this trim piece. Let's look at our paper so that it is like this. Your print is over here. Measure over 6 7/8 of an inch and cut. Okay, so this is what you should have. We're going to make a separate pile for reserves, our scrap pieces, because we're going to be needing to grab back into those to conserve paper. This piece put in a scrap pile. Now let's look at our piece like this. Measure over 6 7/8 of an inch and cut. The smaller piece goes in our reserves. Okay, so here's the front flap. Remember, the bottom has the holes. We marked that top. This is actually going to be able to fit right on our front panel. And when we do that, we're going to center it, and it should give us a nice white border all the way around. And I think that's going to be gorgeous. So I am going to flip this over, and I'm going to put score tape around the outside edges like a picture frame without going over the edges. Now, if you do get some score tape over the edges, you'll trim that off. But we're just going to line that to start. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is put one down the middle. And we can just put one on either side. You don't have to go all the way down. Just like that. So because this is the top here, I'm just going to fold this out. It's going to make things easier for me so that I can see what I'm doing. Whoops, there goes a dauber. I'm going to remove my score tape now and place this. Again, making sure that I have even amount of white cardstock on either side, top and bottom. Now the top, remember, you're not going to go over that score line, so that score line would represent the top of the white cardstock there. So let's burnish it down really good and place this. So I have mine down, and once you get your paper down, definitely make sure that you burnish it down. What we got. Okay, so this is where people who used die cuts, I'm going to instruct you first, and then I'm going to instruct those who use punches. We're going to lay that down just like this. We'll have this peeking out. So we can use our glue, and we'll apply glue, and we'll bring this down to where it is right there at the edge. And that should be 7 inches wide. Those of you that used this punch, a large punch where you are an inch or so, inch and an eighth width here, what you're going to do is place it down, but I want you to measure over from the bottom of your trim a 1/4 inch and cut. Now, I realize I had you cutting these wider, but I wanted to make it real simple for all of us. So do that. Also, those of you that had this, I want you to do the same thing. Measure over 1/4 inch and cut. Any leftover cuttings, such as you may have something like that, put in your reserve pile. Probably use that. Okay, if you have this with the wider large, you'll just place it down at the bottom like so. Just like that. If you use the 1/2 inch, you will do the same, and it will look very clean and nice. Next piece, out of those little cuttings we did, let's apply glue, and we'll just place that right like that. So if you're wondering on this how high I actually went, I actually just went until the top of this little trim piece on the pattern paper. Those of you that are wanting to die cut your flowers, or you've stamped them and you've cut them out, I'm going to show you some techniques, and I showed you about the leaves. Now if you do not have leaves, you don't have to have them, okay? It'll still look nice without leaves. If you have this would look beautiful, or if you have any of the little handmade like I showed you, you can stick them underneath the flowers that you place. Die cutters that used any leafy accents or leaves, I'm going to use a couple of these, so I'll set these off to the side. Okay, so if you don't want to learn some quick flower shaping, inking, and techniques, you can fast forward through this. What I've done is I've stamped one petal with the picked raspberry, and for the cover we would be doing several for layers. I also stamped two of these with the Victorian velvet. Let's start with this one. And this is just real easy to create. So the first thing that I like to do, and you can do a lot of this before cutting it out, I just prefer to cut it out. Now each one of your flowers are going to be unique, and all I'm doing right now is going around the outside, just kind of inking up those edges there with the picked raspberry. Okay, the squeezed lemon, I like to blot off some of that, and I'm just going to lightly brush in the center and out a little bit onto, not all the way out, but just enough. I'm going to come back with the picked raspberry and just kind of give a little pink. And I don't have a whole lot of color left on this dauber. And I think I'll spread out just a little bit more there, and you can dot. One thing that I did do for this too is take a little of the spun sugar and just kind of get over a little bit there. So this is actually what you see here. It may not look exactly because it's not assembled, but then once I have that, real quick, easy is to take your stylus and just kind of push along those edges on each one. And as you can see, they'll start to crinkle and kind of do its thing there. And once I've done that, then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to swirl this around on that petals, just like this. And you can even drag this back and forth like this if it's easier for you, okay? Once you've done that, you can flip it over and press in the center. To create this one, I have 3 layers. Do this really quick. It's not exactly the color, but that's okay. These are 2 of the larger, and what we would do then is, and sometimes it's easier just to use a little hot glue, is place it down so that the petals aren't on top of each other exactly, so they're kind of offset. And then for this I had one more and it went in the inside. Let's see what I have here. I think this might be medium right here. Now you can use a larger one or just place it on in there. And I'm just going to use this. I think I accidentally grabbed a smaller one. That's okay. I like to use my stylus to kind of press down in the center there. The next thing is applying your glue to the center there. I got a dollop of wet glue in the center, and now we just grab our prills, and what I like to do is just pour it in there and then dump it out. And then I'm going to wait for this to dry, and then I'm going to come back. It's easier when it's dry, but I'll do this while it's wet, is to place your Wink Stella on your petals. And this is where your flowers really start to come alive. Now for me, I like to use a brush to do this, and word of advice, do not use a brush and I'm just going to pour some right out here. My bottle is about done. Anyway, you will use a brush or use your fingers. If you use a brush, make sure that you clean your brush right after you use it, or your brush is going to be destroyed. And then I'm just going, you can see how it's shimmering. I'm just going to set that aside. Okay, so let's look at another one that I have here. I'm going to get some yellow. I'm going to daub off a lot of the brightness, and I'm just going to swipe this whole flower. Now I'm into the spun sugar. I think that's what it's called, yeah. And I'm going to go around those edges. Now you don't have to use this combination. Any combination is going to work with these colors. And you can create just a whole bunch of different beautiful flowers. Again, I'm just going to flop this over, and I used a smaller size, just so you know, and it was about this size. And we're going to do the same thing. Real easy. Going around the outside and just kind of loosening up. Flip it over, and you've got a flower. We'll put some glue in there. I've got to clean my tip out. Pour some frills in there. And you've got a lovely flower. Wait for it to dry is my best advice. There's your Wink Stella on there. And once you start layering, it will start popping up more. And if you need more yellow, when it's dry, add more yellow. And then once you get several layers underneath that, it'll look really pretty. And here's some layers and stuff that could have gone in the center. And you can do more yellow. You can even stamp instead of using that color. Experiment a little. Stamp with the yellow and then add your pinks. Okay, so for this flower here, I stamped with the Victorian Velvet. Now I used all colors. Whoops, which one did I, that's wrong. Victorian Velvet, here we go. I'm going to go around the edges and just bring it up a little bit of color onto those petals. Okay, next what I'm going to do is make sure I don't have a whole lot of bright, but I'll just wiggle this around in there in the center. Now making sure that there's not much on there, I'm going to lightly pat some. I'll take some spun sugar, kind of put some color right in there. Then with the picked raspberry, just at the tips there. When this flower is done, and you can add more color and you shape it the way I showed you, you will get something like this. Now, when you're shaping and you just feel like you need a little more color, you can go back and add your color to the edges of your petals that way too. So that is just a real quick easy way, and mix and match your colors. They will all come out beautiful. I have got a ton of different colors. You can even go darker. I've got lint all over. Darker, lighter, whatever it is that you would like to do. Now one thing inside of this album, we need flatter flowers. So one thing that we can do is, even though we shape them like this, we'll press them back down so they're not so bulky like this before placing our glossy accents on. So I hope that has been helpful. I also have an old tutorial on flower shaping that's more detailed that is very helpful. So you can look up flower making and type my name in, Shellie, Shellie, and it should come up for you. Okay, let's get some flowers done and layered in. With this one, I used, looks like on this one I used 3 of the larger. This one you can even do 3 of the larger or 1 smaller, slightly smaller for the inside. And then I used 3 of the small medium-sized ones for this. And you can come back over, if it's too bright of a yellow, dab some spun sugar on that. Let's place some leaves down. If you have leaves, let's add some flowers and things that we might want to use. So one of the things I liked was this. The Earth Laughs with Flowers. I want to use that too. So these are the 2 leaves. If you hand did your little leaves and all you have maybe are just the little pieces like this, I'm going to show you what you can do there. You can take your flowers, whether they're packaged or not, and you can just kind of lay them around as I'm going to be doing. Just place them here and there and all sorts of places. Okay, this one here, I'm going to apply some glue, and I'm going to glue that down, and it's going to overlap a little. This one, I'm going to apply glue, and I'm going to bring it right like this. I'm going to place my first flower, and I'm going to use hot glue because it is faster. And I'll place that right there. I'll take one of these smaller ones, and I'll place that right there. And this one will go here. This I'd like to have off to the side, and I want to use my regular glue with that for sure. I gotta clean my tip because I'm wasting glue. It just wants to come all out. And we will stick this off to the side. And we'll give that a moment to grab. So our cover will look like this when all said and done. I think that's really lovely. Now that we have that on, let's just open this up to where it looks like this. Here's our top, and we have score lines and all that good stuff, and we fit. All good. Okay, so we're going to have to watch that score line. I don't know whether it was me or we all did this. I may have misscored, but if yours is doing the same where you had to pinch it and stuff, that's fine. Just kind of keep an eye on that, and before we place our paper, we'll make sure. So we'll have it laid out like this. Let's find paper for the back. In your paper pack, you will find this sheet. On the back, it looks like this. Let's first trim off the little trim piece at the top. So looking at our paper like this, let's measure over 6 7/8 of an inch and cut. Put the smaller piece in your reserves. Now we're going to turn it so our flowers are at the top, measure over 6 7/8 inch and cut. All right, here's another thing that we can do. We're going to flip this over and put score tape around the outside like a picture frame. We'll go one down the middle, and then we can squiggle some of our glue in between. Okay, I've got my score tape backing off. I have some glue in between there, and I'm looking at it like this. It's laid out. Here's the score line we definitely do not want to interfere with. We are going to go over this one because remember I had us pinch a new one. So we're just going to center that, leaving the same amount of space there at the bottom as the top. Now once you have that down, especially when you're using glue, definitely burnish that all down so you don't get any wrinkles and whatnot. So now when we close this all up, here's the front, here's the back. I want to put a tag on the back, create your own sunshine. So here's the back, there's my top, there's my back, and I'm going to place that. And that's cute. Okay, so we can't add our decorative paper to here or here. First we're going to have our things, all of our inserts completely covered with paper first. We will get them in with our string, and then we'll come back and we will set our magnets, and if we need to adjust this crease again, we will, but it should be just fine. I think that's really pretty. On each one of your inserts, remember this is the top, our flap. On each one of these, we're going to grab a magnet, and we're going to come in about a 1/2 inch or so. Just place that in the center and place them, our magnets. One set. So let's do that with each one of our inserts. I've got all the magnets there. We're going to start now with just one at a time. And we will set the mate as soon as we get our paper for this. In your reserves, locate this piece. This is 6 7/8 inch wide, and it is approximately 5 1/4 this way. So our width is perfect for what we need here. Okay, so we're going to have to cut strips. So let's turn it so the little border is up here. Measure over 2 3/8 inch and cut. Okay, you can put the other piece back in reserves for us to use for something else. We're going to apply glue. Oh, that's really pretty. I like that, what it says. We're actually going to apply glue to this side, and we are going to mount that on that inside flap, making sure we are not on that score line. You should still be able to see a little bit of white border up here and on the sides. So let's use glue for this, and we will use our bone folder to make sure that it is completely down. And using the bone folder will help squeeze out excess glue that you don't need. Make sure I get on that magnet and get this all down. Perfect. Grab another magnet and let it find its mate. This is where you're going to really need to make sure that you are straight on the bottom of that, right down here, so that your magnet places. Put a small dot of glue right in the center of that magnet. If you need to stand it up at this point, you can. And you will just make sure that when this comes over, it is nice and flat, and you will press. What that just did is showed you where that mate needs to go. Now, so that you do not get confused, remember, glue on magnet goes to glue on paper. You can still see, add a little bit more. So we'll just place that. Let's find our paper for this. In your paper pack, you will find this gorgeous print. On the back, it looks like that. Let's trim off that top piece. Once you've done that, measure over 6 7/8 inch and cut. Here's our piece. The other one goes in reserves. Let's turn it this way. Measure over 6 7/8 inch and cut. The biggest tip I can tell you when making mini albums, any craft project, is before you put your glue down, always verify you are going to fit. And the fit that I like is where we have the white border. Some people who teach may not give you that, and that's okay. That's their style, and that's how they created it. Me, I like having a white border, or at least inking around my edges. And please feel free to use any of your inks to ink around the edges of anything before placing it down. So for this, I am going to use score tape around the outside, and then I think I'll just fill this in with glue. I think we'll be perfectly fine with that. Alright, I've got the score tape off and my glue on there. Now this is, here the flap is up here. I want to lay this down, but obviously I want to make sure it's nice and flat, so I'm just going to kind of do my thing here and move that out of the way. And I'm having a hard time seeing what I'm doing here. Don't know if that's going on straight or not. Hopefully it is. Make sure that I get that all down nice. Alright, let's try it. You should snap. Isn't that pretty? So let's reach back into our reserves. Remember this piece here that we had cut on for the inside? This is perfect. Let's just look at our piece like this. We're going to measure over 2 3/8 inch and cut. One thing I'm going to suggest is any little leftover pieces like this, believe it or not, these are very handy when doing tutorials and covering. Because guess what? All we'd have to do with this is cut this in half, and we can place it up along here so it's not left white. And we'll do that towards the end of the tutorial, go back. And anyway, I just wanted to let you know that that is always a wise thing to do instead of throwing things away and then later needing it. Alright, for this, I'm going to apply glue to this side, and I'm going to glue that down, centering it. So I got my paper down, and I am going to use my tool here. I think that's good. Make sure it's all down. Perfect. Let's just close that up and grab one of our trims. And for this, we can actually attach that to the edge. So if you use the die cut, you can just glue that right on down like that. If you have a, whoops, I am stuck here. If you have a trim, you can trim it down again, that 1/4 inch, and attach it like this. Even if you have the smallest one, you can do the same thing, and that'll look really nice. So I'm going to apply my glue, and I'm going to bring that down and glue that down. Okay, I've got mine down. Before I do any decorating out here, I'm going to open this up and start adding paper to this. Now, one thing is because we are working with a wider album, and if you've noticed, it took, when we were cutting, one piece we were able to get this side out of. As we move on, we may be using smaller pieces and then putting another piece of another paper down, and we will make it look nice. So that is one thing we may be doing. So let's go ahead and do something like that, and so that I can show you what I'm talking about. So here is the inside. Let's do the right side that folds in. Let's do that. Let's work on that one. Let's look at our long paper. This is in our reserves. We're going to measure over 6 7/8 inch and cut. Now, what we're going to do is do a little trimming, because this is actually 6 7/8 inch this way, and we are that on this. That's lovely too. So I want to trim this down just a little more. Let's measure over 6 3/4 inch and cut. You're going to get a sliver out of that, and we'll set that off to the side. Let's apply glue, and we're going to glue that down, leaving ourselves a white border on the side, top and bottom. You should have another one of these in your reserves. On the back it looks like this. Let's get the correct size, so measure over 6 3/4 of an inch and cut. Alrighty, so looking at your paper like this now after that cut, measure over 1 5/8 inch and cut. We're going to be applying glue to this side by those edges. Make sure you get close to your edges. We could always clean up any overhang. Now when you place this, you're going to slightly overlap the other, but remember you still have to leave yourself a white border off to this side to match up. So we'll just match that right on up to the top of these. And I am going to open this up so that I can get this down really good. And that looks pretty. Alrighty, let's get for this side. In your paper pack, you will find this print. On the back, it is this. So let's first take off that trim piece. So the first thing I want to do for this is we're going to turn it so we're looking at it like this. We will measure over 6 3/4 of an inch and cut. To conserve on paper, we're just going to measure over 6 inches and cut. You have 2 pieces here. And we are going to apply glue and glue this down top to bottom. Make sure that you have even amount of white cardstock. Remember, there are 2 score lines here. One here on the inside and one on the outside. The outside one is what you're going to be looking at, and you're going to leave yourself a little space away from it when gluing it down. Over here, we're going to do the same thing. There's an inside score line and an outside. Just bring it over a little to the left of that, and we will glue this piece down. Pull this back out of reserves, and this is what you have on this side. We just cut on it for, where were we? I can't even see it. It's right there. That's a slender little piece. So for this, we're going to measure over 1 inch and cut. We'll measure over again 1 inch and cut. Okay, you should have 2 1-inch pieces. We're going to apply glue to that side. We'll match it up with the bottom of our panel because it's the same height, and leave ourselves a little bit of white over here, and we'll glue that down. And we're going to do the same for on this side. So let's do that. So now you can see how we can actually conserve paper. Let's get to this one. Pull this out of your reserves. It's the long piece. Looking at it like this, measure over 6 3/4 inch and cut. Grab this out of your reserves. It's what we've been using for the trim, and this is going to fit perfectly. So we're going to apply glue to this, and this is the front of our little side insert. We'll leave a little white border, glue that down. We'll apply glue to this side, and we'll glue it. Actually, ooh, I really like that. That looks good too. Whichever way that you choose. I actually am going to use the back side, so I'll apply glue to this side and glue that down. I've got mine down. So now you can see how it is that we can conserve on paper in this tutorial. We still have some cutting to do on this for the inside, and right down here. One thing that we are going to need is the insert flip. And we're just going to fold right there on that score line. Okay, and once we have our paper down, we can place this down, and when it comes up and over, it still latches. Okay, let's find our paper. In your paper pack, you will find this print. On the back, it is this. First things first, let's trim off that little trim piece. Alright, let's look at our paper like this. Let's measure over 6 7/8 inch and cut. Let's look at it like this and measure over 6 7/8 inch and cut. You should fit in this, and where you are not interfered with your score line, it will still give you a little bit of white border down there. So let's apply glue to the back and glue that down. Now you can use score tape or your glue, but I am just going to use a little glue on this little lip here. I'm going to fold that lip back at the paper and a little down here. And I'll press, and I'll use my foam folder. In your reserves, you should have a thin piece like this, and it should fit perfectly side to side there. This way too. This is where we're just going to be using our pencil, making a pencil mark and putting it on our paper cutter and cutting to trim to fit. Alright, let's just add our glue. And we will place this, and do not get on your score line there. It will mess you up. Okay. Let's find our paper. Now, a lot of this that we're going to be doing is what I call trim to fit. In your reserves, you will find this. If you place it down and leave yourself a little bit of a white border, I gotta go wash my hands, over here, and a little bit of white border at the top, you can come over here and make a pencil mark, making sure you're leaving yourself a little white border, and our first cut is going to be like this. Then, once you have that down, that's when you can come down here and make that second cut. So let's first do our cut this way and trim down the bottom. So I have mine done, and if I were to place this down, leaving myself a white border, it will look lovely. I'm going to apply glue and glue that down. I have got mine down. Let's flip that up. In your reserves, you will find this piece. It's like a square. And it has a little bit of the print on this side. On the back it looks like this. That has a little bit of the doily. We're going to do our trim to fit. And we are going to place it so we have some white here, white here. Otherwise, if we keep cutting into fresh pieces and we haven't even gotten to our second insert, we may run short. So this is a great way for us to manage our paper. Let's trim on where we did our pencil mark. Alright, apply glue and glue that down. Remember, leaving yourself a white border. After you've burnished that down, and I can't stress enough how important that is burnishing that down so that you don't have any air pockets underneath. We're going to now get into our reserves, and we are going to grab, we just cut off this piece, and we are going to just measure to fit. And how we're going to do that is we can just match it up here, make a pencil mark, but also you have this long strip in there, and that's where we're going to end up placing that there, and then we're going to place that right there, and it will blend in nicely. So if you already know where you need to cut, you can double these up so they are straight and just make one cut and trim them both at the same time if your paper cutter allows you to. Alrighty, I'm going to apply glue to this, making sure I get around those edges there. Now we're going to apply glue to this side. It is. Okay. You should have one of these, Believe in Your Dreams, and it goes right here. Okay. Now, what we have here is we need a full sheet, and we are also going to be needing for this is one of our insert back pockets. So let's first get our paper for this. In your paper pack, you should have this print. On the back is this. Let's trim off that trim piece. Turn your paper so you're looking at it like this. The little postal cards are off to the right. Measure over 6 7/8 inch and cut. Now measure over 6 7/8 inch and cut. Do not glue your piece down. What you're going to want to do is grab your insert back pocket and fold on those score lines. When you do that, you will notice you will have a nice loose fit to get around it. So let's grab our score tape. And mine usually runs away from me. It's somewhere around here, probably right in front of my face, right here. Okay, at the bottom of your little panel piece, we're just going to lay score tape. Burnish it down. Make sure it's down really good. Take it off. Now, you can open these back up. What you're going to want to do is see the score lines. They are going to be over the edge slightly from our paper. And just make sure you do it even. You'll bring it down to the bottom of your paper and press out. And then you can use your thing. Now all we have to do is wrap that around the back. Now, if you get it a little off where you're a little more over here than over here, it is not the end of the world. You're still going to fit just fine in here. So now all we have to do, because we all made the same cuts on our measuring guide, so mine fits perfectly. Now once you have the tabs around the back, we can now add glue to the back of this. Make sure you get your edges and you get in here really good. You can use score tape like I showed you. That is the fail safe, but I'm going to use some glue here. And I'm going to bring it down, and remember we have those little holes we made, and there's a score line above it. We need to be away from that so our thing can close. So you can just kind of eyeball that up here. You should have just a little bit of white border before you hit that one. You should be fitting in there nicely. And then we'll just burnish this all down really good. We still have our paper for that we need to grab. And for that, I think I like that. And this will be perfect as far as the width. We're going to go with that, leaving a little white borders and stuff. Let's trim to fit. And we'll just bring it down to the bottom of that pocket. Now we trim. Okay, we're going to apply glue. And we are going to glue that down. If you die cut this trim, what you're going to do is apply glue across this so that the line starts here, straight across down here. We will bring that up here. It will be a perfect fit, and we'll glue that down. If you used this border, same thing. You can go like this, or you can turn it up like this. Either or. I think that looks really nice like that. So let's do that. All right, leaves. Let's close our thing up. We're going to allow this to dry. Everything to dry. And I'm just going to stick some off here. And my pearls are still wet, so I'm going to be very careful. And I will stick that down. Remember, we don't want real bulky, so I'm using a single layer here. A little bit of pearls in the center, and I think that's pretty. And then I'm going to go and put my Wink Stella and glossy accents. I can now set this off to the side, and I'll let that all dry, and we are on to our second one. We are on to insert number 2. Now, one thing about insert number 1 is we didn't cover the back, and I think we're going to wait until the end of the tutorial to go back and put our paper down so that we can see everything that we have to work with. So insert number 2. In your paper pack, you will find this gorgeous print on the back. It's this. Let's take off this trim piece. I got the trim piece off mine. I'm just going to turn it so my bird is sideways. I'm going to measure over 6 3/4 inch and cut. For now, let's put this in our reserves. Okay, I don't want to cut off the bird, at least not all of them. Let's turn it upside down, measure over 6 3/4 inch and cut. So this is what you're going to have. We're not going to glue it down yet because we do have to put the mate to this. But first let's find our paper for that. So let's set this off to the side. In your reserves you will find this print. It has all the little postal cards here. On the back it looks like this. Let's measure over 6 3/4 inch and cut. We're going to make 2 cuts on this, so let's just turn it so we're looking at it like this. Measure over 2 3/8 inch and cut. Measure over again 2 3/8 inch and cut. So we cut this one short of 6 7/8. We're doing this 6 3/4. Again, I'm trying to conserve on some paper, and giving us a larger border will be just fine. Alright, so we have these 2 pieces here, and one's going to be for the outside and one is going to be for the inside. If you have any pencil marks on your piece that is possibly going to be seen, let's erase those. So you have a choice, and your choice is this. If you were to pull your insert up and just lay this down so it's centered and you have your nice white border, and you pull this down, your choice is either to have this one at the top, which looks very pretty, matches in just fine, and even this one matches in fine. I'm going to be using this for the outside, so I'll set that aside, and all I'm going to do on this is apply my glue, and I'm going to glue that down centered side to side to the inside of that flap. We'll grab the mate, let it find the other magnet, and a small dot in the middle of that magnet. Now make sure that you are flat on the bottom, and remember we're going to pull this over the top. I'm going to put a little bit more glue in the center there. It's easier for me. Anyway, I'm just going to hold that, make sure this is flat, and I'm going to make sure the sides are even, and then I'll press. And now I see where that belongs. So I'll just put some glue there, place that down. I am going to be placing my score tape around the outside, and then I will fill it in with glue. I do like my score tape, especially around the edges. And then I will be placing this down. I got mine down. Mine latches. I'm going to apply glue to this, and I'm going to glue that down centered. And I'm going to match up the sides of my paper here with the sides of my paper down here. So let's do that. Grab your border piece, apply glue, and we will glue that down. And those of you with your punches, you know how to do that too. I'm going to grab one of my vines, I'm going to apply glue to the back, and I'm going to glue that down. And you can situate this any way that you would like. I have a multicolored flat flower that I made, and I'm going to glue that down right there. I'm also going to grab a leaf. Where's my leaves? And I will glue that down right like that to cover up the stem. I have a smaller flower, and I'll just stick that right there. And I have not applied my glossy accents yet to this. I will as soon as I get these down, and then I'll just brush it on my flowers. I do have it on my vines. I have another flower, and I'll stick that one right there. So this is what mine looks like before applying my gloss to my flowers. I'm going to give this a few moments to dry. Some of my pearls I had just put in there. And then we're going to move on to the inside of our album. Okay, here's the top flap. I'm just going to pull that up. Here's our left and right insert. Let's work on the right side. In your reserves, you will find this print. It's 12 inches long, and on the back, it looks like this. So to make sure we have the same cuts left over, we're going to look at our paper like this. Let's measure over 6 3/4 of an inch and cut. All right, again, this is our right insert, the outside. We're going to apply glue to this side, and we'll bring this all the way over to the left, leaving just a little bit of a white border there, and we'll glue that down. So a couple pieces we're going to need in your reserves. You should have this piece, and it should be almost the same size or the same size as your panel. We're going to apply glue to this, and I'm going to show you what it looks like here. It's just a little cutting, and we're going to glue that down to the right hand side of this, leaving a white border, about the same white border that you have over here. Now before gluing that down, just place it. Also, we had cut out that border from the paper pack. This will work nicely. So when you place this down, we're going to cut it to trim to fit, and you line it up. It will fit over that piece. So I will show you mine here. Let me get this piece down. Easiest way to do it, I believe, is just placing that right down next to the seam, making a pencil mark as we've been doing, and trimming. And it's always best to trim on your paper cutter so you can get a straight line. I'm going to apply glue to the back of this, and I'm going to glue that down. Okay, let's move on. We'll just flip that over, and we'll find our piece for in here. In your reserves, you should find this piece. It is 6 3/4 inch tall. Approximately, anyway. Yes, it is. And on the back, it's the wood grain. And we should be about 5 3/8 wide, depending on your paper cutter, about 5 3/8 inch wide. So we're going to apply glue to the back of this, and we are going to glue it down, leaving a little bit of a white border from that score line. And we'll leave our border top and bottom. In your reserves, you will have this print. It's 12 inches long. On the other side, it's this. Looking at your piece like this, measure over 6 3/4 inch and cut. So this is what you should have. Measure over 1.5 inches and cut. This is what we will have. We're going to apply glue to this side, and we are going to glue this down, matching up top to the bottom of this print and leaving ourselves a little bit of a white border. So let's do that. That actually looks good. It looks like a little panel in there. All right, we are on to the left side here, and we'll get our paper for that. In your reserves, you will find this print. On the back, it's the flowers. Let's measure over 6 3/4 inch and cut. We'll next apply glue to this side. We'll bring it over to the right, leaving a white border, top and bottom, and glue that down. Drag this back out of reserves. It's the piece that we use to cut over here. We're going to measure over 1.5 inches and cut. And the back of it looks like this. Once you have this cut, you see where the flowers are right here? We're going to butt this side up next to this. So we'll apply glue to this side, bring that right on over to the edge. It'll leave you with a white border. Match up top and bottom and glue that down. And that looks really good to me. All right, let's do this side, the inner side of our left fold-out page. In your reserves, you will have this piece. It is 12 inches long. On the back, it looks like this. So looking at your piece like this, measure over 6 3/4 of an inch and cut. We're going to apply glue to this. We'll bring it over, leaving a white gap between that outside score line. We will center this top to bottom and glue that down. Alright, next you will have this piece left over, and we're going to apply glue to this side actually. And we're going to match it up top to bottom. We will overlap onto this and we'll glue that down. I'm going to grab one of my leaves. I'm going to apply glue and I'm going to glue it down right there. That little rose cutout that we did, and we also have another cutout that says, "And we found love." We're going to apply glue. We'll glue that in the middle. We'll take this one and we'll tuck that right in behind a leaf if you can. If not, just place it down. Just like that. I think that looks good. Some people out there hot rodding. Sorry about that. In your reserves, you will find this sheet on the back. It looks like this. Measure over 6 3/4 inch and cut. Apply glue, and we're going to glue that down, centering it side to side, and also leaving a space, headroom of our white cardstock showing between that edge of this paper and the bottom score line, just as we've been doing. So let's do that. Grab this out of your reserves. It's a square now, and it looks like this on the back. So this should be the same 5 1/4 by 5 1/4 approximately. So what I want you to do on this is measure over 1 1/2 inches and cut to start. So this is what you should have left over. Just stick that piece right here. And if you find this in your reserves, we're going to need this. It's just a long, slender piece. We'll need that. Now we're going to turn it looking like this, and we're going to measure over 1 1/2 inches and cut. A little piece we are definitely going to need. So I'm going to scoot this up. We're going to apply glue to the back of this, and we are going to bring it down, leaving ourselves a white border down there and matching up my sides with my paper up here. It will leave a white gap there. Once I do that, I'm going to take the small little piece. I'm going to butt that up right next to it. And if you prefer to butt it up this way, you can. It seems to kind of match in a little better that way. And then I'm going to trim to fit. Make a pencil mark right here, trim it so I am even with that side. And I'll glue it down. Alright, you have this piece. I believe it's 6 7/8 inch. We're going to measure over 6 3/4 inch and cut. And then we're going to put this on our paper cutter and cut right down the middle. Next, I'm going to apply glue to this side, and I'm just going to place that right like this. I have a little sentiment here. When in doubt, add flowers. Apply your glue, center that, and glue it down. Just like that.